Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Ty Sheets. Ty is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2024, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, how he decided to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, his experience navigating the MBA program as a parent, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Ty Sheets. Ty, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, Brett.
All right. Well, how's everything going? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Second year of springtime is a really nice time to be at Darden in Charlottesville. Enjoying the slower pace of second year for sure. We're gonna go on some hikes in Shenandoah this weekend. Weather's gorgeous. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a busy time of year in admissions. And so I'm so appreciative of your taking time out of this conversation. A hike in Charlottesville sounds like a nice way to spend a weekend. It should be pretty warm this weekend too.
Yeah. So Shenandoah National Park, they got a good bit of snow actually a couple weeks ago, but I think it's been warm enough to melt off and dry out. And yeah, we're gonna trek up there and see what things look like. We're excited for it.
Are you somebody that enjoys outdoor activities?
Oh yeah. We are big hiking fans. My wife and I and my daughter. We hiked a bunch in Shenandoah last semester, but the winter we kind of put a pause. So we're kind of getting back in the rhythm of things, going back on most weekends now.
All right. Do you have a favorite hike in the area?
It's tough to pick one. I mean, we've probably done 10 or 15 in Shenandoah just by itself. Something rock. I'm not remembering the name of it right now, but there's a hike where you hike up almost straight uphill, but it's a gorgeous view once you get there, and it's a rock kind of formation. You kind of just look out over the entirety of the Shenandoah Valley, and it's amazing. There's so many of those types of hikes around here, though. It's hard to remember all their names.
That's all right. Well, thanks for indulging my hiking related questions. Certainly one of the benefits of being in Charlottesville for business school. So before we get too far along in the conversation, though, tell us a little bit more about who you are and your background.
Sure. So I'm actually originally from Virginia, but I haven't been back for 10 or 11 years since I moved out in the first place. But I'm from a little tiny town in Southwest Virginia called Chilhowie. Um, and first love was music. So I poured myself into trumpet playing, and all through high school was really passionate about that. So I decided to go and get my degree in music, and went to a tiny little school in North Carolina called Darden and did music education, thinking I was going to be a band director. That plan changed a little bit whenever I got more and more passionate about performing. So I went and did a master's in performance at the conservatory in Cincinnati, and performed and taught in a few different capacities for a few years. Did about a year stint on cruise ships and got to travel all around the world and see a lot of cool things and meet a lot of really interesting people. And that was an awesome stage of life. But long story short, just sort of, I had a good friend of mine who had volunteered a lot and was passionate about having an impact on her community. And that got me thinking and reflecting, what kind of impact am I having and what kind of impact do I want to have? So I kind of reevaluated and thought, let me try something else. So I went to an AmeriCorps program called City Year, which AmeriCorps is kind of like a domestic version of the Peace Corps. It's like a national service program. So I spent a couple of years in Kansas City serving in disadvantaged schools, joined staff for that organization, managed teams and partnerships with schools there in Kansas City. And that kind of takes us up to right prior to Darden. It's been quite the ride, a little bit of a windy path, but a good one.
Our listeners may know I'm from North Carolina, so I know Gardner Webb, Boiling Springs, North Carolina, the Bulldogs right there.
That's right.
I guess just a little bit past Shelby or so. Good barbecue in that area of North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm a little partial to Kansas City barbecue these days. Haven't spent the last 5 or 6 years there, but definitely not going to complain for some North Carolina barbecue either.
Yeah. So Kansas City, also very good barbecue, one of the barbecue destinations in the United States. So how did you get interested in pursuing an MBA?
Yeah, so I was, as I mentioned, managing teams at City Year in Kansas City and sort of assessing what I wanted my career to look like. I'd been a musician, I'd worked in a nonprofit, and Um, Maybe I wanted to do that full time for my career. Maybe I wanted to do other things. I got married and started to think about having a family, and really just wanted to expand my opportunity set. So I had a great experience at City Year, but I knew that if I wanted to transition out, it could be difficult to do something else or something, or even to keep growing in my career and getting more responsibility and more kind of higher leverage jobs or ability to make decisions that were going to have bigger and bigger impacts, if that makes sense. So started thinking about the MBA mainly as a means of increasing my level of opportunity so that I could, one, have a more fulfilling and impactful career, but also give my family the opportunities that I thought they deserved. So started thinking about it. Nobody else in my orbit was really thinking about or doing an MBA program, but as I did research, I started to understand kind of what these types of programs did for people, and that made me really interested. So, took the GMAT, did all the research, put the applications in, and kind of shot my shot. And luckily, things worked out. And it's a good thing they did. I was pretty convinced my wife was convinced I was going crazy there for a little bit. Like, is this actually a thing? Applying to an MBA program like Darden, but yeah, things worked out. I'm really really grateful they did.
Well, what got you interested in Darden specifically? What jumped out to you about UVA?
So UVA was always on my radar, being from Southwest Virginia. It's got a stellar reputation around the country, but especially in Virginia, you always hear about UVA. So Darden popped up pretty quick when I started doing research, and as I learned more, I actually started to come to some of the events and things. I remember pretty distinctively a mock case study, like a mock case class, essentially with Michael Lennox, who's a strategy professor here. And I love that. I thought that was just the coolest experience. And if all of those Darden classes would look and feel like that was going to be, I was pretty interested in that opportunity. Um, so, and I knew that Darden would be a challenge, but I thought about, what were my goals with going to an MBA and doing an MBA program, and Darden really checked all of the boxes for me. So I knew I needed to get some comprehensive business education in. And I mean, Darden's reputation for sure preceded it in that regard in terms of how good and rigorous the academics were. I knew I wanted to have access to really good companies and organizations, and Darden for sure provided that. And I knew I wanted to be surrounded by a group of really brilliant peers who pushed me to be better every single day, and Darden also provided that in spades. So out of those three things I was looking for, Darden was the clear choice, and luckily enough, uh, they accepted me. So here I am.
We mentioned where you're from. Darden also has a scholarship for folks who are from the Appalachian region of West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee. Is that something that was on your radar when you were applying?
Funny enough, it wasn't exactly. I knew I had to put in, whether I was from one of the counties in Appalachia on the application, but I hadn't made the connection that could translate into financial aid. And it turns out, yeah, that scholarship was something that I was eligible for. And I'll never forget the day that Whitney Kestner in admissions called and said that I'd been awarded that scholarship, which I was just incredibly grateful for. I mean, I think, growing up in Appalachia and Southwest Virginia, I, going to business school is not something people that I knew did. And then the fact that this scholarship is out there to help try to start to build a pipeline for people from that area is something that I love that it's out there. Obviously, it's benefited me, but I think there's a lot of potential to get some really bright people from that part of the state and from states around it, West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and to build a pipeline of people who are coming to business schools like Darden from that part of the country. We know that it's pretty economically depressed. Yeah, that was a very cool thing to learn about for myself, but also the fact that that's a scholarship that's going to be available for students from that region is also really pretty amazing and pretty unique for a school like Darden to offer.
And for listeners who are curious about that scholarship, it's called the Kington Scholarship, and you can find more details out there on our website. It's worth doing your research if you're curious about that scholarship. You're from Appalachia, and so strongly encourage you to do that. So, well, let's talk a little bit more. So, you come to Darden, Ty, and what was that adjustment like for you? You obviously had this music performance background. You had done AmeriCorps, but now you're in business school doing graduate business education. What was that adjustment like?
Yeah, so two main things. One, my wife and I had just had a baby, so we moved from Kansas City to Charlottesville with a 3 month old, which was its own set of just huge life changes. I like to say we bundled our life changes all together to have a new child and embark on a big move and start in a really demanding MBA program and recruiting and all that. So just adjusting to one, being new parents, moving across the country away from my wife's family and into a new city like Charlottesville, and to start an MBA program. All those things required big adjustments for me. So it was a time of transition and a time of challenge for my wife and I especially. Um, but just adjusting to that. Uh, it taught me a lot about myself, honestly. Um, it also kind of like helped me learn some of the strengths that I brought to the program because I'm not really your typical MBA student, if there even is a typical MBA student anymore. But I don't have the business background by any means. I'm a bit older than the class average, and the fact that I have a wife and baby, all those three things were kind of not your typical or traditional or average kind of MBA student background. So while that could kind of lend itself to me second guessing myself or feeling less confident about what I kind of brought in and what I could offer, as I made the adjustment to being an MBA student, to living here in Charlottesville, to being a new parent, I gained a lot more confidence that actually I have a perspective on things. I have a perspective that actually is different from other people, and a set of strengths that is different from other people in my class. And I hope that those have added to discussions and projects and things. And so it was a really difficult transition and challenge, and especially in the early part of the MBA program when I hadn't gone to school in 10 or so years. So adjusting even just to the school part was quite a big task. But once we found our footing, I think we really thrived. And ever since then, I've sort of reflected on what I'm learning, and not just about business, but about myself. And I've become a much more confident and I think a much more capable person as a result. It's really jump started my career and kind of transformed the person that I sort of see myself as. So change and challenge can be really hard, but I see this one as a really pretty necessary one for both me and my family.
What was the process of picking a business school like? Doing that with the family, obviously having you have a new child on the way, all of this kind of stuff you're having to think about. What was important to you and your family as you made your business school decision, kind of collectively as a group there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think being aligned with my wife was the most important thing. Um, and that's easier said than done. But I think being aligned on our expectations and our goals was the two main most important things for us. In terms of expectations, I knew based on students I'd talked to before coming to Darden that it was demanding and rigorous and a challenging program. And it was going to take up a lot of time, both in the academic side and recruiting for internships. So, I wanted to make sure I was very aligned with my wife that, hey, that's what we're actually getting ourselves into. If we go and move and do this thing together, is that, you're not going to see quite as much of me, especially during that fall of the first year while academics are hot and recruiting is happening. So being really on the same page about what we thought we could expect based on the best information I could get about what the experience was like was really important for us. But also being aligned on what the goals brought more broadly were. You know, yes, we're going to make sacrifices here in this short term, but we're going to see them as an investment in our goals for our future. Like I said earlier, my main goal with this MBA was to expand my option set, my opportunity set, and I knew that that was going to require a lot of growth and a lot of learning, um, and that wasn't going to come easy. But we both knew if we were going to take our family into to the next level, and to have the type of future we wanted to have, this type of investment was really necessary for us. So yeah, those aligning really heavily with her and staying aligned on what the expectations were and what our goals were together were the two most vital things. And that's something we still work on, especially considering that I'm going into a consulting job after Darden. It's going to continue to be something that we got a lot of good practice here doing, and we'll continue to exercise as I go on to my next thing post Darden.
So it's interesting to hear your story because you talk to a lot of incoming business school students and they're like, all right, I'm just going to focus on school. That's really all I can do right now. And you had a new child to also, to navigate being a new parent and all that comes with that. And of course, relocating to a new area. That does feel like a lot, Ty. How did you break that down or figure out, an approach that worked for you and your family as you navigated all of this newness?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think part of it was, well, let me just say, I could not have survived this without my wife. She is a superhuman. I mean, she was working every bit as hard, if not harder, than I was every single day of this entire journey. Raising a child is no small feat, and I always had respect for parents. But wow, I mean, just the blood, sweat, and tears that she's put in of raising our daughter is just something that I will never stop admiring. All that said, though, I needed to find people that had done this to talk to and reflect with and bounce ideas off of. So that's one approach that I took. Um, Two was I needed to have priorities. I knew what my priorities were, and I needed to make decisions when trade-offs were required based on those priorities. So to dig a little bit more into that, I knew that I needed to come here and get as good an education as I possibly could. So I knew I needed to focus on academics. That's perhaps not as common of a thing for people going into MBA programs, is that they are really, one of their goals is the academics. But for me, I knew it was. I wanted to come here and learn. And Darden has been excellent for that. I mean, especially looking back on the second year and all that I've learned and how I've grown, it's for sure delivered on that promise. But that was a priority for me. Obviously, getting a job was a huge priority for me, and spending as much time with my family as I possibly could during that period was also my priority. So if I ever had to make a decision about how I was going to spend some time, I could be spending it reading a case. I could be spending it having a coffee chat for recruiting. I could be spending it doing bedtime with my daughter, or I could be spending it going out with my friends and MBA colleagues. And I just kind of had to, together with my wife, make a hierarchy of those priorities and use that as a sort of barometer for, hey, what am I going to pick based on what my priorities are? Because there's any number of things that could be taking my attention and time in a given moment. So I just had to have really clear priorities going in, and I had to continually evaluate those as time went on, along with my wife. And I mean, I'd like to say that this all worked and was perfect. It definitely was not. We had our share of struggles, but I know for a fact that we are stronger for this experience for sure. And again, it's all about just building that strength and that muscle of okay, how do we prioritize? How do we communicate about those priorities? Because we're going to use that in our next phase after Darden as well. And I'm really grateful that we got the chance to exercise that here.
Were you and your wife involved with the Darden Partners Association? Was that a resource that was helpful to you?
Definitely. So my wife's been a part of the DPA since we moved to Darden. Even more impactful, I think, for us has been the Parents of Darden Club. So that was kind of an informal small club up until this school year, actually. But I talked to a few MBA students from Darden who had actually like helped start and run Parents of Darden. Sarah Costa comes to mind. I don't know if you ever met Sarah. She's at Vanguard now, but she was a person I talked to when I was interested in Darden. She and I both actually did City Year, so that's how I got connected with her. But she was a parent when she was at Darden, and she had done a podcast about Parents of Darden and the experience of being a parent and a student. So she was a huge help. But that Parents of Darden group is a small but growing force, I think, at Darden, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done this year. I'm actually on the board of Parents of Darden this year, along with a couple of really my good friends. And it's such a unique experience to be a parent and a student at Darden, and I'm glad that we have an outlet like this club to connect, both on the unique struggles of the experience, but also the unique kind of strengths and circumstances that I think we bring. So the Parents of Darden Club helped me for sure, and I'm very grateful for that. DPA also does some amazing work as well.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of interviewing Sarah for the podcast here and talking with her about her experience. And yeah, I was so glad to hear that resource, because you're right, that is a particular MBA student experience when you're doing this, not just with partner or spouse, but also with kids or a child or whatever the family situation might be. And so I think it's important, no matter where you're coming from, what you're doing, to have people you can sort of connect with about your particular experience and talk to them about that. And how are you managing this? And what are you doing? And just bounce ideas off each other and support each other.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, summer after your first year, what did you do?
So I was in Denver, Colorado with Bain and Company. Was very fortunate to get the chance to work with the team there, and I had an excellent experience. I mean, my wife and I knew we wanted to go to Denver, and luckily enough, the opportunity came up with Bain, and it's a small and growing office. So that's actually where we're going to be returning after Darden. But we love Colorado, the mountains, and we're super excited to move out there full time a few months after graduation. Uh, Still not quite sure exactly what the start date situation looks like, but yeah, it was an excellent summer. I definitely uh, one I'm grateful because I don't think I really would have had realistic access to a company like Bain without Darden. So Darden for sure helped me even have the chance to get an opportunity to talk to a company like Bain, which I'm very grateful for. But also Darden really prepared me robustly for the experience. The core academic program at Darden is notoriously challenging, and but in a really constructive way. I found myself to be surprisingly well equipped. I mean, for sure was a growing experience for me over the summer, but I used a ton of the business analytics skills that I learned in my first year. I used a lot of the finance skills in that internship, and I'm sure I'll continue to use things I've learned here to succeed in that job.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Sometimes we've heard from folks on the podcast that the summer internship is the thing that sometimes gives them perspective on what they've just done during the first year. They can see the picture a bit clearer at that point. Was that your experience?
Yeah, so I was working on targeting basically how to target a sales campaign for this company. Where should they be looking? What types of customers should they be looking at? How should they approach these customers based on a bunch of data? And I thought this summer, sort of at the end of the experience, if you'd have told me what that project looked like before I came to Darden, I wouldn't have really had the first idea of like how to even approach that problem, much less how to implement and do the work and break it up and actually solve a problem and propose a solution like the one that I worked on this summer. So it is kind of fun to look back and truly try to get that perspective on how far you've come over such a short time. Like I said, it was quite the change and adjustment coming here, but I know that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of unfamiliarity, that thing that was pushing me to be better, it's taken me into a different universe as far as my ability level, my skills, and my confidence. But it's also shown me a lot about where I also want to go. I have a much clearer idea for where I want my career to go. Um, and it's a lot less murky and hazy and uncertain. And I you know, you can't be certain about anything, but I definitely know a lot more confidently kind of how I want to build out my career based on the last year and a half that I've spent.
Gosh, that's such a valuable thing to be able to have that clarity in that way. So you come back to Darden after that summer in Denver, and you're a second year student. How have you thought about the elective courses that you've chosen? Has it been, you've tried to do like a concentration in a particular area? You just picking a lot of classes that are of interest. How have you chosen your classes?
Yeah, I mean, I've not really focused on the concentration side, but I have earned a couple. The one, I think I've focused on things I'm interested in, and two, I've focused on things that I think will help me in my career. The things I'm interested in has been the primary driver, though, and there's a ton of options. I mean, I've gained a newfound love and interest in the analytics and data, and even into like the AI area. So I've taken some AI oriented courses. I took a data science and business course last semester that was excellent, really hard, but super interesting. So that's something it actually is an interest of mine, but I think it will bleed into my career pretty significantly. I'm taking a game theory course right now just because I'm really interested in that, and it's super fun. But also on the preparation side, I've taken classes that maybe even weren't my favorite subject areas, but I know will really robustly prepare me from a technical skills standpoint for success in consulting and at Bain. Bain does a lot of private equity work, and I'm in a private equity class right now, getting a lot of really good legwork done on what the industry looks like, what due diligence is, how to value companies, that type of thing. So yeah, the things I'm interested in and the things I think will help me prepare for the career. Those have been my two main motivations behind my electives.
I appreciate you sharing that. I can't tell you how many people have come on the podcast and said, I earned a couple concentrations, although that was not my necessarily intention. It just sort of happened that way
Yeah,
because of the courses that I
right.
picked. That's a pretty common refrain.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty common. I've heard the same because I mean, it's definitely fun to say you have a concentration in business analytics, or I think I even might have had a concentration in asset management. Although I'm pretty suspect of anyone who might want me to manage their assets. But it's definitely fun to have that little certificate. I'm sure once graduation comes around.
Well, you mentioned parents at Darden. Any other clubs or organizations that you've been involved with here in your second year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've been pretty targeted and much more strategic about how and where I want to spend my time in the second year. So, Parents of Darden has been the lion's share of my extracurriculars per se, being on the board and trying to again build out a system for our club now that we're official. Fundraising and communications and all that type of stuff and programming. So that's been really fun, and I think we've grown a lot as a club. And I hope that we've left a good left the club in a good place for the next board, who's actually currently being selected to come in and continue building. In the first year, I was a member of Ed Freeman's faculty student band, which was really fun. I haven't had the chance to reconnect with them this year yet, but I definitely want to get back and plug back in with them at some point. But Ed, I'm sure you know who Ed is. Ed's one of the more well-known professors we have. It's been so fun to actually get to know him, not even in a business ethics sort of context, but in just talking about music. Ed's a keyboardist and a singer, and he's super passionate about music. He's got this house out in the woods, and to go out and just rehearse in a very casual way and just get to chat with him and the other members of the band was like one of the highlights of my first year for sure. So, and also get the chance to scratch the music itch. That was the first part of my career. So getting the chance to play a little bit is super fun. So I want to reconnect there for sure.
What instrument did you play in the band?
I'm a trumpeter.
You just never know. Sometimes people play multiple instruments and they say, "Oh, in this band, I play this thing." So, did you have a favorite song y'all performed in the band?
So we did a Fleetwood Mac song. I don't even think I actually played trumpet on it. But I think it was I think we did Landslide. But we actually we run quite the gamut in terms of genre. In Ed's band, we do some blues, we do some jazz, we do some rock and some pop. It's quite the variety, which is super fun, and it's really just kind of driven by the band members. We have a couple of students, a few faculty members. Mark Lipson on the finance faculty plays in the band. So does Jared Harris. I know I'm not getting everybody, but yeah, it's quite the eclectic group. But Ed definitely provides the vibe and the personality that sort of sets the tone for everybody else, which I really love. I mean, Ed's been one of my favorite people here since I got here.
Yeah, I had the good fortune to interview him for this ongoing faculty series that we have called Office Hours. It was really a highlight. I mean, obviously, he has had an incredible career, all the research and publication he's done, stakeholder theory, all these kinds of things. He's also a super interesting guy. We were asking for book recommendations, album recommendations. It was a lot of fun to talk with him. So here you are, you in your last semester here as a Darden student. Ty, anything on your Charlottesville bucket list? You got to do this before graduation. Anything along those lines?
I think we're just going to get into Shenandoah National Park as many weekends as we can. We are going to try to hit as many of the parks around Charlottesville as we can as well. Our daughter is up and running and talking and doing all the things as a little toddler does, and so we want to find as many outlets for her as we can while we're here. I definitely want to finish out classes strong. As I said, things are a bit more relaxed and slower, which I'm not complaining about by any means this time of the second year. But definitely want to finish out strong and enjoy my time here and spend as much time with my peers and colleagues as I can. we're also looking forward. We're heading up to Denver for spring break and going to take a look at some neighborhoods out there, so that we have an idea about where we want to might sorry where we might want to move come late summer. But really, yeah, that's basically it. Just going to finish out strong here at Darden and graduate. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but I've always think it's interesting. I mean, obviously you got a little ways to go here before graduation, but do you have a favorite course that you've taken during your time here at Darden, at least so far?
Yeah, it would be a tough choice. So I'm a big fan of Kenda Hatcham, the economics professor. I had her for the core economics class, but I also took a class with her last in second quarter called Economics of Money and Banking. I think Kenda is the gold standard in terms of Darden professors, both in teaching and in writing. Her materials are just fantastic. And she is, in my opinion, one of the best case method professors we have. So, and she's also just a delight. But she's brilliant and sharp and knows how to lead a case discussion. And the materials have always just been so good. I mean, her cases are very good. And then just diving into the fundamentals of, you know, what is, why are banks a thing? How do they work? You know, this concept of maturity transformation, all this stuff I never even thought about before. Um, so that was probably my favorite, but there's a lot that come pretty close. The data science class in business for sure ranks a close second there. Um, yeah, those are the first ones that come to mind.
What makes Kenda so good at leading a case discussion? I'm always curious from the student perspective. What do you really like about what she does in the classroom?
So I think that she has an excellent awareness of where the conversation is, but also an idea of where, not where she wants it to go. I think she has clear objectives for what she wants the class to learn, but the way that she allows us to get there is really excellent. I think sometimes it's I can only imagine how hard it is to lead a case method discussion. I'm sure it's much harder than it looks actually from the professor's point of view. But knowing what you want the class to get out of a particular case, but also letting the class lead the discussion, but providing guardrails to help us stay on track is, I'm sure, in my experience, it seems to be a lot harder than it looks. And she does that really, really well. She lets the class take the discussion, but in a way that still is targeted towards an end goal or a set of end goals. She's an expert at that.
I've had the good fortune of helping out with a class this quarter, an ethics through literature course, and it's through the case method as well. And you have to think of so many questions that you want to ask because you have to be ready for, like, what if I ask this question and nobody responds to it? What's another version of that question I can ask? What about another question? And it's this like iterative thing where you're trying to lead the conversation through sort of systematic questioning, but you're also creating all this opportunity for the conversation to go in other anticipated ways, and you never know the perspective people are going to bring. Reading a book is, not that different than reading a case. People could take different things out of the case and gravitate towards different parts of it. And so I've just found that discipline, that's you obviously get better the more you do it. This is early for me. I've never really done this before, but I've been so impressed by how Darden faculty lead those case discussions because you really have to be prepared for a lot of different perspectives and you have to know how to ask really good questions.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So, do you have a favorite memory from your time here at Darden?
Probably would be my daughter's first birthday, actually. So my daughter and wife share a birthday. um, my daughter was born the exact day my wife turned 30, and they were born in the same hospital, which I'm sure was the best and worst birthday gift of all time, considering my wife now has to share a birthday with my daughter. But anyway, we actually had her birthday party in the piano room at Darden on a Sunday morning. And we invited my family and some friends at Darden, and it was just a really beautiful experience. There were people coming by and stopping by and saying hi, and the kids were just having a great time. And I mean, as you know, the building is gorgeous. And I told my family, don't get used to this level of venue for birthday parties moving forward. But hey, we're going to start off with a bang with this first one. But that was just a really beautiful kind of community experience, and I think kind of encapsulates the feeling at Darden for me. And um, yeah, I'd say that's the fondest memory. It's funny, it's not a particular class or a discussion, but that's what sticks out in my head.
Oh, that's a great memory. That's what a great place to have a first birthday party. It's a beautiful room, and yeah, not too many rooms in the world where you have like a grand piano in there. It's pretty nice for a
Yeah,
for a first birthday party. So,
I'll say.
um, yeah. Well, last question for you here, Ty. What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners as they think about their own MBA journeys?
Sure. My advice would be to, at all costs, be authentic, and don't second guess what you have to offer. So I think this applies to everyone, but I'm especially passionate about people like me, frankly, with fairly non-traditional backgrounds, or people coming in with kind of unique circumstances, whether they're parents or whatever. Um, and I think that it can be easy in the process of both applying for an MBA program like Darden, or when you're actually here to change what you might say, or not offer exactly what you might think because you're worried about how it might be perceived, or that somebody wants to hear something different in an essay or in a class discussion. And what I've learned, I think, so far is that I actually do have a unique perspective on things, um, and I am much more confident now in sharing that authentic experience, and that opinion or that perspective on a particular discussion or a problem. And actually, some of my best friends here, and some of the people who I've learned the most from, are also not the typical person you might think of when you would think of an MBA student. So I would just encourage anybody who's thinking about this to really, at all costs, be authentic and not second guess what you have to bring, and to bring that fully.
I love that advice. Something that we certainly try to reiterate here on the podcast, that what makes this community so rich is everyone's difference, right? People come from all kinds of different backgrounds, different perspectives, lived experiences, all around the world, all around the United States. It's just an incredible mix of people here. And I think sometimes candidates, when they're applying to school, they get worried that they don't have the right this and the right that. I'm from this particular background. What if everybody's else from this other background? And that uniqueness, what makes you different, is a real strength, and you should absolutely lean into that. But I know that sometimes people don't feel that way, so I appreciate your saying that, Ty. So, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Ty. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And will we see you out there with the faculty band in the coming months?
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I've got to going back to rehearsals for sure, and I got to get the horn out and start practicing again.
All right. Well, look forward to that. But thank you so much for being here, and good luck with the rest of the semester.
Thank you so much, Brett. Really appreciate it.
And that was my interview with Ty Sheets, second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2024. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.